Good morning, conference. No. I think we can do better than that. Good morning, conference. All right. Let's spice things up a little bit, okay? Okay. So good morning, everyone. My name is Tokwe Olawoyin. Get used to that name. And I'm so excited to be here as a new Green Party member. The Green Party has had an unprecedented year with thousands of new members, and I have been reliably informed that there are 500 of you right here, right now. Big up yourselves. Louder. Let's go. Okay. I want to thank Zack for asking me to introduce him today. It is such an honor, and it reminds me that often what stands in the way for so many people who look like me is opportunity. There is so much untapped talent, and that is why I joined the Green Party. I'll be so real with you. If you had told me a year ago that I'd be in the Green Party, I would have probably laughed in your face. And it's even wilder that I'm standing here. But I suspect that there are many disillusioned voters up and down the country, especially within the ethnic minority communities. Many of us grew up supporting and believing in Labour. It was a rite of passage to vote for Labour because historically it had been a party for the working class. It was a party of the people, for the people, or so we thought. So my journey away from the Labour Party began after 2016. With his inspiring hope and ambition, Jeremy Corbyn made many of us feel seen and heard, and his loss at the polls was not just a political setback, but it was a deeply personal and devastating blow. However, I will always encourage everyone to vote, and I firmly believe it is not a two-party system if you take a proactive approach to your vote. My disillusionment with Labour forced me to look outside, and I found you guys. So again, me being so real, I was initially hesitant to endorse a political party so publicly. After all, it is still politics within a white supremacist system that is not designed for people like me to succeed. But I refused to resign myself to hopelessness. The Green Party's unequivocal stance on Palestine was the initial attraction, and solidarity with everyone in London marching today. However, what has kept me here, and so many of you, are the other policies, such as scrapping tuition fees, nationalising essential services, electoral reform, universal basic income, a commitment to racial and social justice, and we are the only political party that recognises humanity and advocates for peace. The major parties act like it's naive to dream, but if you ain't trying to win, why lead the team? Shout out to George the poet. Now, of course, no political party is perfect, and as I stand before you today, I sadly don't see much of myself in the audience. The Labour and Conservative parties have egregiously failed in their attempts to tackle Britain's legacy of empire, which is also engineered, fueled and sustained by racism and white supremacy. These were my concerns. So many people who look like me want to get into politics, but have nowhere to call their political home. And if political parties want to attract people like me and others from marginalised communities, it is going to take some work because it's not just about representation. Earlier this year, I had the opportunity to meet with Zack after my initial meeting with Zoe. He warmly welcomed me and took the time to address these concerns. There is a lot of work to do, but we don't need perfection. We just need something tangible to work with, and I believe we have that. As a member-led organisation, we have so much more say in policies and challenging decisions we disagree with. 2 years ago, Zack was elected deputy leader of this great party, and at the time he made some ambitious pledges, such as for us to be seen and heard more in the media, placing intersectionality at the heart of everything that we do, meet communities and build strong relationships, to promote and be held accountable by platforms like mine. I have a podcast, Black Canvas, and I'm here today with my co-host, Demetrius. I stand here today as a result of those pledges. I'm black, I'm Nigerian, I'm British, and I'm a woman. Zack has been instrumental in making the Green Party feel more accessible to people who look like me and breaking down long-existing barriers. Zack is everything we were taught a politician isn't supposed to be. He's friendly, he's warm, he's kind, he's funny, and he genuinely cares. He takes the time to listen to you and makes you feel heard, but most importantly, he isn't afraid to be challenged, and trust me, I do. I believe that politicians should act with humility and remember that their role is to serve and to advocate for the people, especially the most vulnerable in society. Zack represents a new direction. So with 4 newly elected MPs in Parliament and over 800 councillors, I'm confident this direction will lead to real hope and real change. So I'll leave you today with a few final words from my favourite author, James Baldwin. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. So it is my complete honour and privilege to introduce to you the Deputy Leader of the Green Party, Zack Polanski.
Time for tops, remember that name. I've got to give a speech now, Tops. I want to talk to you about telling the truth. We know the truth can be in short supply in politics, but as a party, communicating the truth is essential to everything that we do. Whether that's on protecting the National Health Service, a fair taxation system, and yes, indeed, the climate crisis. It's fair to say a lot of the media aren't always supportive of people telling the truth. There are a very narrow window of things that you're allowed to say and things you are absolutely not allowed to say. But as a party, we really cut through when we communicate with clarity, honesty, vision, and people really appreciate that. In fact, we found out on July the 4th that at least 1.9 million people took a ballot box, crossed it because they appreciated it. They appreciated the truth. And telling the truth, it requires us to be brave, stepping up, our vision and our ambitions, even when others seek to stop us. Now look, I'm not saying that the media are entirely to blame for everything in the history of time. I'm just saying there might be a little bit of work for them to do. Because none of these issues that we're facing today are new. We see them throughout history. But in that same history, we can also see the bravery and solidarity of people who stepped up. Take 1936. The streets are alive with resistance. Europe on the edge of disaster, fascism spreading like wildfire. Oswald Mosley and his British Union of Fascists are looking to bring that same hatred to our streets, planning a march through the East End of London, a place, by the way, that many Jewish immigrants, my ancestors, had settled. They were fleeing persecution and had gone to the one place they hoped could find home, that it would be a safe haven. And it must have felt as if they were anything but welcome. It's the 4th of October. Jews, Irish dock workers, communists, trade unionists, socialists, workers, fellow migrants, people building barricades, not of weapons, but of collective solidarity. 300,000 of them. 300,000 people saying no, standing together in their diversity. 300 people standing together and shouting, "They shall not pass." People standing shoulder to shoulder, blocking the fascists. The police try to clear the way for Mosley's black shirts, but the people stand firm, refusing to let hatred march unopposed through the streets. And the fascists didn't make it through. You know the story. The Battle of Cable Street is a powerful message. When we stand together against injustice, no matter how strong the challenges seem, we can, and we do, win. And the point about the media is they refuse to tell the truth, even back then, or at best, they completely missed the point. They called those 300,000 people a mob, a violent rabble. The truth was, whole communities were fighting for their basic human rights, to live free from violence and persecution, to live in peace. In history, you can always find the heroes, the helpers, the truth tellers. Dr. Hannah Billig, you might never have heard of her, but she was the angel of Cable Street, a Jewish doctor. She lived and worked in the East End. She moved through the crowds, providing medical care to the injured. Her bravery earned her the respect of the entire community. Dr. Billig was an absolute hero. Pauline Pierce, Hackney, 2011, the London riots. You might remember a video that went viral. She stood there in a street, stood with a walking stick during the riots. She's with her walking stick even when the streets are burning, shouting at people to take pride in their community. She rightly became known as the Hackney heroine. And recently, we've all seen the racist riots sparked by decades of anti-migrant rhetoric by politicians and by the media, and it's not just the Daily Mail, but in places like Gipton and Hare Hills. A Green councillor working tirelessly to protect his community, putting his body on the line, speaking his truth, that these are our streets, our buses. Most of you know what's going on, but for those who don't, on the 18th of July, the likes of Tommy Robinson and Nigel Farage were spinning misinformation and lies. But our councillor in Gipton and Hare Hills, Councillor Mothin Ali, was being a hero. Thank you, Mothin. Because these are people who stepped up. And as the tune goes, there ain't no power like the power of the people, and the power of the people won't stop. And right now, we see the power of the people, and we see the power of communities from stepping up. From where I grew up, right here in Manchester, to Birmingham, Cardiff, Newcastle, to my new home now in Walthamstow. People turned out in their multitudes to say no. We reject this divisive hate. It might have sold newspapers in years past, but people can see through it. We will never forget the Windrush scandal. We will never forget the 72 people who died at the Grenfell Tower. And we will never forget Labour politicians who echo Tory lies when they say things like, we have lost control of our borders. We reject Islamophobia. We reject anti-Semitism. And we know our communities are at our best when we stand together. In the Green Party, we will always stand side by side with our friends and our neighbours, and we will never, ever let the fascists win. And here's the thing, conference. The public are so ahead of the government on this. People showed up on their streets with their friends and neighbours to tell the truth. And what is that truth? That if you use the NHS, the person who cares for you is so much more likely to be a migrant than anyone in front of you in the queue. We have all benefited from food, art, music, culture from all around the world, but it shouldn't require migrants or people of color to sort of contribute a trick or deliver something for us to recognize our collective humanity. The threat to our society is not arriving by dinghy or small boats. The threat is flying by private jet. They are. They are flying high above our food banks. They're flying high above the picket lines. And it's water companies pumping sewage into our rivers while shareholders and CEOs become super rich. The Green Party will tell the truth about migration and about racism in our society. The Green Party will stand up against the far right and fascism. And the Green Party will continue to be clear that multimillionaires and billionaires will pay their fair share. When "You shall not pass" was shouted at Cable Street, it was already echoing throughout the world. So here's 2 words the media can run as a headline. No Parasan, and that's for real truth. Apologies for my Spanish. Because when I talk about stepping up, we have done a lot of stepping up recently. And I'm not just talking about all the stairs from leafleting. What a year it's been. We set out to win 4 Green MPs. And when we decided that audacious plan to quadruple our representation literally overnight, the media all said, "Can you do it?" We said, "Yes, we can." And conference, we did it! And we did it together. So to every single one of you who donated, posted on social media, leafleted, had your finger bitten, we love you, Danica, knocked on doors. You made this happen. Thank you. Thank you all for stepping up in the sun, rain, and snow. And let us recognize and celebrate the difference that you have made. My first time getting an ovation from 3 MPs, but I think they were applauding you. Talking about making a difference where it matters, I want to acknowledge the last 5 years of achievement by our outgoing CEO, Mary Clegg. We now have thousands of new members, hundreds more councillors, and our Green MPs elected. Talk about leaving on a high note. Thank you, Mary, for everything that you've done to help make this happen. I also want to recognize the monumental task of standing a candidate in every single seat in England and Wales. That was for the first time in history, by the way. There's so many people to thank for this, and I really want to acknowledge how hard the entire staff team have been working. And a special thank you to Andy Moore for everything he did with all the volunteers to make it happen. And of course, to the 571 of you who I know are in this room, not all of you, but many of you, who put your name on a ballot paper. You might not be MPs yet. We've got more seats down there. But you gave people a real choice, a chance to vote for what they believe in, to vote for hope. And we are so proud of you. And I hope you are really proud of yourselves, because I think it's important to remember, why are we doing all of this? We are so needed. We're 2 months in. And Labour are still supporting the 2-child benefit cap. This is the policy that expert after expert says lifting could take 300,000 children out of poverty. This is cruelty, and it's affecting the most vulnerable children. Our party has a very clear message for Keir Starmer. Scrap the cap. We'll keep pushing the government to make these changes happen, and this conference is all about building our movement. More MPs, more councillors, more assembly members, and in Wales next year, we look forward to stepping up campaigning there too, and eventually getting our first Senedd members. But this year hasn't been all celebrations. Because a year ago, I left this stage, loving the energy of our conference, just as I am right now. But it was October the 7th, 2023. And by the time I stepped off the stage, world events were unfolding that would reverberate around the globe. A horrendous terrorist attack in Israel and a massacre in Gaza that has been devastating to witness every single day since. We have seen unimaginable violence, heartbreak, destruction on our TVs and on our phones. Every day, more depravity. I am proud that our party's immediate response was to call for an immediate ceasefire, the only humane response to end the violence and the suffering. Those who called it naive have not learned from history. From Nelson Mandela to the Troubles, there have been moments where endless cycles of violence seemed inevitable, that there was no route through the carnage and the destruction, but it's been shown people can come together. And together in unimaginable circumstances, they can come together and negotiate peace. But in telling the truth, we must recognize that peace just can't happen until we end our own government's complicity in the violence. We must end arms sales to Israel. To Israel and to all countries breaking international law, in moments that have just felt so dire, I'm really proud that fellow Jews and the Muslim community have been marching together in solidarity, acknowledging our collective pain. But the genocide and all the atrocities around the world must stop. We will continue to stand and work for peace and international justice. And yes, the other truth that must be heard. The illegal occupation must end, and we must have the immediate recognition of the state of Palestine. It's really powerful to see that, a room of people standing for Palestine. Now, international peace efforts were very much the main discussion when I was last here in Manchester early this year. We were launching the new Muslim Greens group. Now, Asma Alam, who's the co-founder, in her own words, joined the Green Party, yes, because of our stance on Gaza, but stayed for all our other policies on climate and social justice. And it is amazing to see all our new members, from Asma to Tops with that amazing introduction. There's 500 of you at this conference. We've celebrated you a few times, but one more time, give it up for the new members. Conference, we have a huge amount of work to do to keep reaching out to all communities and continue that work, to do genuine, authentic community engagement, to connect with the communities we literally live in. The Association of Green Councillors is working on a full programme, but imagine how quickly we could grow if everyone took responsibility. With our friends and our neighbours, we can talk about the Green Party, offer to go to faith and non-faith community spaces, talk about our values, who we are, what we stand for, and most importantly, to listen, engage, change, grow. You know, I sometimes hear people say there's no diversity in the Green Party, but I want to recognise the contributions of the amazing diverse people in our party. From the LGBTIQA Greens to the Greens of colour, Jewish and Muslim Greens who are doing brilliant intersectional and solidarity work, but it is true. We as a membership can do so much more. So let's step up together and go out and support them all. Remember this, the people who took to the streets in 36 didn't just fight against something, they fought for something, a better world, a more just society in our schools, in our workplaces, in our communities. Today, we must do the same. We see the anger and pain that exists. Let's find the hope and joy in a movement for real change. Let us not forget that the Battle of Cable Street wasn't won by a few heroes as inspiring as their leadership is, but by thousands of people who refused to be bystanders in the face of injustice, people who stepped up. And in May, at the local elections, remember them? So many of our teams stepped up once again. We had some more incredible wins. I was live on LBC with Andrew Marr when the first results started to come in, and I was pretty delighted when our interview was interrupted because Khalid Musharraf and Nick Hartley had just been elected, first Green councillors ever in Newcastle. In Bolton, just down road, sorry, I couldn't resist. Hanif Ali's joy was unforgettable, a son of Indian immigrants whose father came to England to work in the cotton mills. Today, we proudly call him Councillor Ali. Now, in truth, there's a whole bit I wrote in my speech here about the amazing Hannah Spencer, but you've all now seen that on the stage for yourself, so it's a great opportunity to quickly shout out instead her beautiful greyhounds, Will, Olive, and Grace, and the Graham too, the late Graham. Amazing dogs, and Hannah, you're pretty all right yourself. Katie Grant. You set a new record for us in Avon and Somerset, securing 22% in the Police and Crime Commissioner race. Outstanding work, Katie and team. Let's talk about Hastings, an incredible vibe. I went there earlier this year and they delivered big, going from 4 to 12 councillors in one leap. That's absolutely phenomenal. Well done, Hastings. Let's keep going. Merseyside, first ever Green councillor to Sefton Council. They're all special wins, obviously, but Neil Doolan, I've seen you do this for a long time, and to see your persistence has finally paid off. Bravo, Neil. Get this one, 4-way contest in Stroud ended with a Green smashing it with 74% of the vote. That's right, I said 74%. Take a bow, Jonathan Edmonds. Okay, a historic one now. Siobhan Harper Nunes, the first ever woman of colour in the country to stand for Metro Mayor. Thank you so much, Siobhan, for your courage and your leadership. Bravo, Siobhan. To keep things moving, let's give it up for the Young Greens as a block, because they not only fielded 59 candidates in the general election, they got 12 new councillors elected in May. Just on the Young Greens briefly, I was at their convention just a few weeks ago in Newcastle, and I saw the passion that I witnessed. It was phenomenal, even for the most niche subjects you can possibly imagine. I want to welcome the new co-chairs to their role, and I want to give a huge thank you to the outgoing chair, Jane Baston. Those are some big shoes to fill. Well done, Jane. A special shout out to someone I know pretty well because she's my new colleague at the London Assembly, Zoe Garbett. Zoe. Zoe is already shaking things up at City Hall. She is pushing the mayor on reform of the police, rent controls, and she is leading that charge on drug reform. Look, the war on drugs is a sham. Drugs don't get criminal records, people do. And too often it is young people of colour. It is time for legalisation and regulation. I am thrilled to tell you, Zoe is on it. Basically, what I'm saying is a massive thank you to everyone who stood in these elections. I won't name you all, I'm sorry. But from general to local, London Assembly, mayoral to police and crime commissioners, there's been a lot of elections. From Mumbles to Cannock Chase, you are making us all proud. And I just want to say this. To those who didn't make it over the line just yet, whether I met you in Harlow, Billericay, cheering on Akua right here in Manchester and Thirsker, go on, these are also people I've not yet met. Your dedication does not go unnoticed. You will define every single day what it means to step up, and we say thank you. I want to end by telling you why speaking the truth and stepping up is so urgent. Quick thought experiment. Imagine it's the 60s or 70s, and we didn't know anything about the climate crisis. We've got full equality, and everyone is just really satisfied. If we were then told everything needs to change right now because of science, it would be really hard to get everyone on board with that. But we do not live in that society. We live in one full of mass inequality and injustice, where a few people are doing great, but most are really struggling. The climate emergency rages on, and we are absolutely on the brink of disaster. But we know the answers. We know the same solutions to solve these social issues are the same solutions to tackle the climate crisis. Our Green peer, Natalie Bennett, she clearly puts it on the front of her book when she says, change everything. And in changing everything, imagine a place where our air is clean, where our rivers run clear and our green spaces thrive, where nature is not just preserved but allowed to flourish. Imagine an economy that works for everyone, where jobs are sustainable, fair, and rooted in communities. Imagine a society where the health and happiness of each person is valued above all else and no one is left behind, where diversity is truly our greatest strength. Friends, this vision is not just a dream. It is within our reach, but it requires courage, commitment, and our collective effort. It will be a country with a universal basic income, a culture that values leisure, play, and art as much as work, where education is free and entirely about the joy of learning. A country that actually has a fair democracy alongside proportional representation, and yes, media reform too. It is not an impossible dream. Remember, just this time last year, we were talking about going from 1 MP and winning 4. It felt like a huge vision and a big step up, and it was, and we did it. And friends, we're just getting started. Because we have got a collective vision to create, a story of liberation, both against injustice for oppressed and marginalized communities, a story of animal liberation too. A story that cares and values everyone in our society and recognizes that working class communities are not each other's enemies. A society that includes disabled people from the very start and not an afterthought. A story that shows love to our LGBTIQA communities and values older people. It will include groups like Gypsy, Roma, traveller communities, and it recognizes the contribution young people make to this story. Conference, it is time to step up. Let us raise our ambitions, so whilst we campaign one seat at a time, we must also continue to build our grassroots movement. This has never been more urgent, more relevant, and more possible. The people of this country are writing this story with us. They're writing it in their community halls, on doorsteps, at the bus stops. Let's keep rewriting it until everyone is included. Everyone is empowered. Engagement not just at election time, but all year round. All year round environmental justice. And yes, all year round social, racial, and economic justice too. We have made history together. Let's keep going. This Green Party is ready to grow. Now that's real hope and real change. Let's go, conference!